Hello and welcome to the ADHD Artist Podcast, where we explore and celebrate the lives of artists with ADHD. Listen to interviews with all different types of artists with ADHD, where we talk about life, art, superpowers, and... Wait, what was I saying? Hosted by Sarah Guys, your fellow ADHD artist. Thanks for joining. Hey everyone! Hope you're staying well out there. Today is June 17th, 2020, and there's a lot going on in the world. So I hope you're staying healthy and hydrated, and I'm sending my love to all of you. Stay safe out there. And thank you for joining me for the third episode of the ADHD Artist Podcast. Today's interview is with Charlie Irving. Charlie is an actor and writer here in Chicago. She and I have been friends since 2014, 2015, something like that. She is a company member with New American Folk Theater and has appeared in many of their shows, including Hot Pink and The Summer of Daisy Faye, for which she received a Joseph Jefferson Award nomination. Charlie has worked with various theaters in the city, including the Factory Theater, Artemisia, and Metropolis. She was trained at the Gately Pool Conservatory. In January 2020, Charlie was featured in a reading of her first play, Crush, with the New Colony's Writers' Room, that explored the relationship women have to porn. And I know what you're thinking. Sarah's just having all her friends on the show. Well, kind of. I just have some amazing artist friends with ADHD who are fascinating, and that's kind of how we got started. But if you or someone you know is interested in doing an interview, you can send me an email at theadhdartistpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you, even if it's just letting me know what you think of the podcast and connecting with me. So without further ado, here is Charlie Irving. Hello, we are here with my friend Charlie Irving. Thank you so much for being here, Charlie.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start and just ask you, when were you diagnosed with ADHD?
I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 6 years old. So very, very early.
Mm-hmm.
My brother had been diagnosed with it and he's 9 years older. So they were like, this girl might have it too. And they tested me and they, decided I had it. So I took meds for it as early as 6 years old. And it's like kind of interesting because my family has always been very like, you should go to therapy if you need to. And like, if you need to take medication for being sad, you should. And like, we are very like not shaming of medications for helping you be the best you can be. And so I was also like, so my dad was very like attentive to if the medication was making me feel weird or anything. And I remember like after I first took it, I told my dad, I feel like a robot. I feel like nothing all the time. And he was like, okay, that's not how it's supposed to make you feel. So we went and like talked again and like adjusted the medication to what is called Concerta. I think they still have it.
Yeah,
I don't
they
take
do.
it anymore. But yeah, and that made it so I was like still who I am, but I was just able to like control impulses and things like that, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But it was nice to like be so young and be in a safe space where I knew I could tell my dad, like, I feel weird. And then like things would actually change and adjust.
Yeah. What was the reaction of your teachers and other adults in your life and maybe other kids?
I don't really know. I mean, for my teachers, they probably wanted me on that first one. I have a lot of like, I don't want to say issues, but like, things that I had to fight every day, like once I realized what they were, like of teachers in my past kind of coming up into my subconscious again now and like shaming me for my outgoing nature, So they probably wanted me to like be on that first medication forever and just like not talk and be nothing. Because I don't think my teachers saw enough of a change. I don't remember if they saw a change or not, but I know that my whole elementary school experience, they still treated me like other because I had ADHD and kids knew that I was on medication. I don't know how they knew. Like now that I think back to it, like why would other kids know that? But I think it's because teachers would say stuff like, did you take your medication this morning, and things like that. So kids would say that to me, like if I was talking or being hyper, they'd say like, did you take your medicine today? Stuff like that. And it was not a great experience. It's not like my whole childhood was engulfed in that, but like those were parts of my childhood that definitely like happened quite a bit. So my teachers, like they tried to cope as much as they could or whatever they thought was right. And like I don't know if this happened to you, but like I was sat alone a lot. There would be like, how like in elementary school you're like pods of kids like sitting. So my desk was separate always. There was only me, and like I would be all the way by the other chalkboard, and all the kids would be in groups.
That's so isolating.
It's so isolating. And one teacher in 4th grade literally sat me at a desk. It was at one of those half octagon tables, and I literally faced the wall. Like, and like all the other students had sat in their groups, and I faced the wall because like the teacher was like, this is a problem child. I can't handle her. And so she has to sit alone because I can't sacrifice all the other kids learning for hers. And like, I don't know, like, I'm sure that was tough. And also because like, what are they going to do? I did talk a lot and stuff, but like, I bet they could have done something better than like putting me all alone, because it definitely had like an impact on my life later.
Yeah. So can you talk about a little of what happened as you grew up?
Well, like, so you did the artist way, I've done the artist way, and they like ask you to explore, like, what did a teacher tell you at one point in your life that you repeat to yourself all the time, And a lot of it was the whole like sit down, be quiet kind of stuff, and I remember when I was in, I think it was 2nd grade, we like had a teacher that was like, does anybody know how to play like an instrument? And I used to like mess around on like the piano at our house all the time. So I was like, I can play a piano. So I like went up and like started playing like, random stuff like I did because I was like 7. And she was like, stop, you don't really know how to play piano. That's not actually knowing how to play. So you can go sit down. And I was like, I'm humiliated. To me, that goes hand in hand with my ADHD because like that's just who I was, right? I do take medication to help me cope with certain symptoms of my ADHD, but also there are other parts of me that are intertwined with it, like my outgoing behavior. And like that moment, she was like, no, that's wrong. You should not be adventurous and excited. And then in 6th grade, I had a teacher who had kind of figured it out. She would let me like, quote, nap under her desk, where really like it was like a test. And then once I was done the test, I would get to like nap under her desk, which was really just like me getting to feel special. But also she was separating me from the rest of the room, right? But I felt like cool, and I got like that thing that got to feel like something other than being punished, but it also helps the other students. That teacher made me feel like I was special for being outgoing and weird and different. And then middle school was hell on earth, and then high school was a lot better.
That's funny because I had the same experience.
Oh, it's
pretty
horrible.
much. High school went much better than middle school.
Yeah.
Middle school was miserable.
I mean, because I grew up watching like 80s movies about high school and stuff, and everybody hating high school so much, like it was horrible. And I was not prepared for middle school. Like it was horrible. And a lot of it was because I was this hyper kid. So when I started middle school, like I don't hold any of the kids accountable for like way they acted or anything like that. Because honestly, like we're all trying to figure out like who we're going to be.
Sure.
We're all dealing with hormones, and no one's comfortable enough yet talking to us about the hormones we're experiencing. And so like, I really don't hold these people in any contempt, but I was affected by certain ways that people treated me. And I remember this one time there was like this like fancy Valentine's dinner that everyone was going to go to. And I like overheard that it was happening, and nobody had invited me. And I was like, can I come? And they were like, well, it's kind of like invitation only. And I was like, oh, but like, I thought we all hung out. And they were like, well, I didn't want to tell you this, but such and such said such and such, that like we're just worried that you'll kind of like embarrass us because you're like really loud.
Oh.
So you'd think I'd be like, you suck, fuck you. Like, but I wasn't. I was like, I promise I won't be like annoying. I promise I'll be so quiet and well behaved. Like, please let me come. So then I like remember that night, like I like went to the girl's house and they like all dressed me up in their dress and I looked like so beautiful. And then like I went to the dinner. It was definitely like a grown up, like kids feeling like grown ups dinner because it was all of us in middle school, like at a fancy restaurant. It was so weird. And then I was like so well behaved. I made sure that I didn't talk too much, that I wasn't too loud. And it was so fucking boring. And like, and like, by the way, my friend that was a guy was so out there, so loud, so nuts. Everyone was laughing up a storm. And I'm sitting there like, shit, like I want to be making people laugh right now. Like, why does he get to do it? And all the girls like him and I don't get to do that, you know? That changed when I got to high school. Then I got to like be crazy and wild and like I was put on the improv team and like it was fun that I was outgoing and funny and hyper.
Can I ask, were you on medications all throughout that?
Yeah.
The Concerta?
Mm-hmm. So when I was like a kid, so I used to take it only on the weekdays, which is, I think a lot of kids did that. It was like whenever you went to school, you took it. But when I was in fourth grade, I wouldn't take it in the summer. And I also have depression, which is, you know, a common thing and sucks. I treat it now.
Same.
But
I'm on meds too.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel you.
So when I was in fourth grade, I was not on medication for depression. And in the summer, I got extremely depressed in fourth grade, like 2 weeks of like a bad episode where like I would just like never let any adults away from me, you know, that kind of thing, or how it like manifests in kids. And they were like, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, she's supposed to be like happy, you know, she's a kid. And then the school year started and I felt good again. And they were like, okay, maybe it's because she's back at school, you know, and she like has something to do. But then every weekend I would not take it and I would start getting sad on weekends. And so then I told my parents, I was like, I think that it helps me feel like myself when I take my medicine. And so I started taking it all the time. So from like fifth grade pretty much on, I took medication every day because it also treated my depression. But yeah, so then the older I got, like I was on medication every day. So yes, when I was at that Valentine's Day dinner, when I was in school and I was like talking and being wild, that was me medicated. So I was still like myself, you know, which is another thing I think people have wrong about medication. They think that it means that like you aren't who you are, when really it just gives you the option to like not be completely impulsive. Like for me, that's how it like manifests.
Yeah. Were you diagnosed with hyperactive?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I was diagnosed with what was ADD back then. So it was inattentive. So mine was less like over the top, you know, being outgoing, and mine was more like spacing out.
Yeah, being like, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
I had plenty of that, but yeah, my hyperactivity was a big aspect of my ADHD.
Which is interesting because what I've heard, and this is a generalization, obviously, but that ADHD, the hyperactive, is more common in boys. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. That it's easier to recognize in boys.
This is true. I've heard that. I don't know any data really, but I do know that I think it's just because of the way it manifests in women and girls. I mean, I had plenty of like being too much. Like I remember I would get so excited that I would like bite my friends. Like when I was in like second grade, I would just get so excited and I would like bite, and then like they'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, sorry, I'm so excited, you know, like, so I did have like that hyperactivity actually, like, and still to this day, my best friend who lives with me can tell like when I haven't had my medicine because I'm like pulling on him or like pushing him a little bit, like being just like too touchy, and it's like, stop. But like, I mean, he doesn't really mind it, but he can tell. The hyperactivity
Mm,
definitely does manifest in me, but I think also for women, ADHD is a little different from guys because with guys, it's like they can't stop running around and they can't stop like hitting and they can't stop, like throwing things. And with girls, it's much more like they can't stop talking, they can't stop
mm,
yelling, they can't like it's a more of like being big and loud as
interesting.
opposed to like being physically big and loud because that is like a societal thing that is put on us, right? Like boys,
Yeah.
when they're out of control, they're violent, and when girls are out of control, they're like. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, like ingrained in us. I think that
Hmm.
society does expect us to act that way, though.
Sure. Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about when you started doing improv in high school?
Yeah. Improv in high school was awesome because I was a class clown. So I got to be funny and like nobody was mad. The bigger I was, the better.
Hmm.
And I was definitely like a physical, funny person as opposed to like some of the people on the team who are like really witty. Like, I mean, I think I'm witty and shit, but like moody and shit. But like, they're like,
I
they
would
could like
agree.
say like singers and thank you, one liners, but I was more like, I'm gangly and running around the stage and it's nuts, and like that was kind of like where my improv came from. And I think that that definitely is because of just the way I am as a ADHD
Yeah.
artist.
Was it freeing?
It was super freeing. What's actually funny is before improv, I was always supposed to run around the basement of our school because our basement like had lockers in it and stuff. And my teacher would be like, run around twice before you get to rehearsal because I would be so wired from the day. And also my medicine was wearing off, right? Because that
Mm.
was back when medicine didn't last as long as it does now.
Hmm.
And so I had to like get a little bit tired and like get a little more focused. So I would run around the basement, and sometimes like the track team would do that too when it was raining. And I remember this one time like the track coach started yelling at me like knowing I wasn't on the team, but he was like, pick up your feet, pick up your feet. And he was like, you should join the track team. And I was like, this is such a weird life I'm living. But yeah, that's like, I definitely liked it. Of course, high school is still high school. Like
Of course,
I
yeah.
had plenty of people like on my team that would throw shade and like say I was annoying and things like that, but they never said it to my face, so I really didn't care. I was just excited to be around them.
Mm.
Like it's definitely not how I act now. I think that now as an adult, I surround myself with people that are just like uplifting and awesome. But when I was a kid, I was just excited to be on the improv team.
Yeah.
I was like, you can make fun of me all you want. I don't really care as long as I get to be on this team with you guys.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I've directed you before, and
Yeah,
and
that's
yes,
true.
I've directed you as an actor. And one of the things that I noticed, and I'm sure you're aware of, is that you like to have a physical gesture attached to the line or the moment, and it seems to help stick into your memory. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, definitely. Like I'm a spatial person. It's not that I don't do it on purpose, but if the blocking changes, my life, like it's not like I'm gonna mess up the show or anything, but I'll be like, all right, I gotta do some more
Mm,
work. It's like my brain has to go into overdrive just to like be able to keep it going. So blocking helps me, unless it's improv, because like I never had anything expected in the first place. But yeah, like gestures, things like that. I also like have memories that way. Like
yeah,
I if somebody asks me like when a song came out, I can feel spatially where I was like listening to it in the car.
me too.
And then
Me too.
yeah, and then I
Seriously.
can know that yeah, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay. I was in the car, my dad was driving, so I must have been like which car was it? Oh, okay, it was the VW bus. Okay, that must mean I was in 4th grade." So it came out in 1998. And then like I'll be right because like I remember exactly where I was. So it's not like I don't remember with facts. I
Yeah.
remember with, like you said, like spatial things and context.
Yeah. It's just so fascinating, like the way that we learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I've been realizing that about myself over the past 10 years or so, I would say, I started noticing like, oh, I actually can remember things when I am physical about
Yeah.
it. And yeah, spatial.
And I think it does have to do with like, I don't know like how much, I'm not a psychologist, you know, I don't know how much has to do with like being ADHD and not, but I think that it definitely reminds me of that kind of person that we are because we have this. It's just like we take the context from our world around us. That's why I didn't learn as well in school because I didn't have enough context. Also, like I wanted to talk and be around people, but like I asked too many questions. That's what a lot of teachers said. And it was probably true, but I was also a kid. So like, why would I know that, you know, and why would I be able to deal with that? Why wouldn't they guide me and let me know like when you should ask questions and how and like what is a good question and like things like that. Instead, I was just put against the wall. So like, yeah, high school is fun. Like my improv troupe, like we were all like throwing shade at each other because we were high school students, but like I had also like a core of friends that were outside of improv. So I had friends that like accepted me for being crazy and wild and like thought I was really funny and they could see that I cared about them. So like just because I'm outgoing doesn't mean that like I'm not extremely like observant of others. And I don't know if you've like experienced that as a friend of mine. Like a lot of times people, I don't want to be like, a lot of times people think of me as a certain way, but I'm not. But like, I think it's something about being like the outgoing, crazy, like delivering jokes kind of person where like in high school, I remember I would always ask people like, when you first met me, did you think I was a bitch? And they would all say yes. Like every person that first met me. But then they'd realize that like either they took my jokes out of context or that like I'm just like crazy and I'm actually very caring of my friends as well, or like, you know, those kinds of things. So like being outgoing and having ADHD has like it's great things on the inside, but it also makes people kind of judge you a certain way or believe something about you before they know you. Have you found that ever, or is it just because I have the H part?
No, I mean, I think that I have hyperactive tendencies too, and it's definitely with women in particular for me, where I'll come off the way that I do not want to be come off, and then people will get to know me and be like, oh my gosh, okay, she's nice.
No, I think that's true. I mean, like when we first met, I remember like I mean, it was because of Dark of the Moon, but I remember like after the auditions and after the casting and everything, I like talked to you a little more. I think you were at the bar, and I remember like just hearing you talk about like where you'd come from and like the stuff you were focusing on in the art world and like all these things. And I was like, whoa. I wasn't like, she's a bitch, but I was like, whoa, she's serious. Like she knows what she's talking about, and she's like way fancy and like, whoa. And I've told you this before, but like you definitely inspired like my artistic side, like the part of me that was able to call myself an artist and not just like someone like messing around in theater, because I had never gone to school for it. So I felt like I didn't belong, you know, and you like showed me that you can be an artist and learn and do all those things like outside of education.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
No, of course. And then I realized like now I think back to when I heard you talking about that stuff, and like you talk like that still. And at the time it seemed like, quote, intimidating, which is also a terrible thing that like women have to deal with, which is like any competence we show looks like we're trying to intimidate people. But really it was like, it was your focus. It was that part of you that is like super focused on things. Like when you talk about things, a lot of times you are pragmatic about it. And it like what you were saying about your ADD, I can tell that that's a part of how people could perceive you in the beginning. And then once they know you, they're like, oh, she's like very focused and likes to rationalize what's going on and figure out her backstory and figure out her next step in life, you know? And I have those things as well. And I think it's something that is just like something that goes along with ADD and ADHD.
Yeah, well, I think it's part of the reason why we were drawn to each other is that. And I think one of the things I notice about you is that you deal with some of that with humor.
Yeah.
like, hey, don't worry
Me?
about that. I'll just make a joke. Which
Wait.
I love because my tendency is to shut down.
Yeah.
If I'm
Really?
feeling uncomfortable or something. Yeah, I mean, not so much anymore, but yeah, that was definitely a coping mechanism of mine before, where I would just shut down and not and kind of have like an internal anxiety attack without showing it, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
No, yeah, I
Um,
think that that is super relatable and that yeah, I've like made lots of jokes. But then like I think I've also learned, which I'm sure you have too, is like realizing when I'm feeling that thing and then being like, okay, I'm making a joke, but also for real, I
mhm.
think we have to talk about this. Like, to
Yeah.
like a director, like even when you were directing me, there were points where I was like, okay, I want to follow your direction, but there's like, I'm feeling some kind of way. We got to figure it out for a second,
Yeah.
like, or else
Verbal
I'm not going to be able
processor.
to get there. Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
or
we both are definitely verbal processors,
yeah,
I've found.
exactly.
Um,
And I think that that's I mean, not frowned upon, but like I have felt that that is something, it's the same thing as like asking quote too many questions. Like I have felt so afraid in auditions and rehearsals of like speaking up. And part of that is like this ingrained fear of mine that comes from childhood of like
mm,
not being conceited, not being the center of attention.
mm,
Like, Charlie, shut up, like that kind of stuff that like comes out of my head because that's what people told me when I was a kid. And I mean, I remember you talked to me about like, what do I want to talk about in this podcast?
mhm,
And that's like one of the first things I think about is how damaged my self confidence is from other people deciding that the way I acted as a kid was unacceptable.
mm.
And I was medicated, okay? So I wasn't like doing crazy shit. I was just being who I was, a hyperactive kid with ADHD, yes, but like me without my medicine is like I'm sitting in a car, and I don't know if you've ever had this, but like you're you're sitting in a car and you like see the car handle and you're like, I could just open that door. I could just do it. What if I did? And then like the difference is like when I would
Impulsiveness.
have medicine as a kid, I would like lock the door and I'd do it. Like, or when I wouldn't have medicine, I'd lock the door and I'd do it, right? And it's like, because I had to just like do that weird thing. But then when I would have medicine, I'd be like, oh, I kind of want to pull at that doorknob. No, that's not going to be safe. Continue on with your life. Like it
Yeah.
made it so I didn't have to like focus on these weird impulses. It
Yeah.
helped me not interrupt people. Things like that are how my medicine has helped me.
Yeah.
But
Well, it
it
also
like got all
sounds, oh,
mixed.
sorry.
Well, what I was yeah, I was just gonna say, finished thought, like I just got it all mixed up
Hmm.
with like people saying like, don't be outgoing, don't be like big, don't ask questions until you like need to know the answers, and like I had that all mixed up with like, don't open the car door when you're in a moving vehicle, and don't interrupt people when they're talking to you. It's like some of those things make sense to push down, and others like I've pushed down, and now I'm seeing the ramifications of it as an
Mm.
adult.
It sounds like self-awareness has been really important to you in
Oh yeah.
relating to other people. Do you feel like some of that is because your parents were very supportive?
Yeah, I think my parents were super supportive. It was nice that like they also taught me like how to advocate for myself. When I was in high school, I did really badly in school. Like my freshman year, one of the semesters, I got a 1.5 GPA or something terrible like that, where I was like, what's up? And it's not like I'm not a smart person. Like, well, I thought I was stupid, because that's what grades told me. And the teachers didn't know how to teach me. And it was just all overwhelming. My biggest problem, which is directly connected to ADHD, is that I never knew when we had homework assignments.
Mm.
Like I never, like I wasn't paying attention to the corner of the board that like always had your homework in it. And it's like, well, everyone else can do it. And I'm like, well, I'm not everyone freaking else. And that's why, like, when you have accommodations, you have note takers and you have people
Mm.
who take down your assignments and let you know later verbally that you had an assignment, things like
Mhm.
that I never had. Because I think I kind of was able to convince everyone around me that I didn't need the extra help when really I did. And so my senior year, or no, my junior year, I found out that there was like a special education class, technically. We called it SPED because we were SPED kids. And it was like you got a free period if you had ADHD or ADD or something like that, and then we had some folks that had autism and Asperger's in our like class as well. There was like 5 or 6 of us. And I found out from other students who were in it that like you just got a free period to like be in there and do your homework during the day, and like have somebody who's your counselor who can be like, oh, this is what you've missed. I talked to your teacher about that. And I was like, why don't I have this? Like, why have I been going around like barely getting by? And there's been this thing that I legally am allowed to have.
Yeah.
And so I told my parents, and they like made an appointment with the school, and I was sitting there and I was like, I want this free period. And they were like, well, we don't necessarily think that you need it. And I was like, do I qualify for it legally? And they were like, well, yes. And I was like, then give it to me. And and they like looked at my parents, and my parents were like, I mean, yeah, you heard her. Like, give it to her. And so I got it. And like my senior year, I was able to like, I got a 3.8 in my final semester because I had this open time of like being able to like figure out what assignments I'd missed. I had medicine that was still working during the day as opposed to trying to do my homework at night when like my brain was everywhere. And yeah, that like whole class really changed everything for me because I kind of I stopped being like ashamed of being ADHD, stopped being worried about like people, because that's kind of what those teachers were saying in the room, right? When they were like, are you sure you need this? Yeah. They were essentially saying like, are you sure you want to be a sped kid? And I'm like, fuck yes, I want to be a goddamn sped kid. Like, and thank God I did, because I would not have gotten into college if I hadn't. Like, I got into Roosevelt University because they saw my increase in my grades and like how I had actively gotten better. And then I was in the special ed program, or not, it wasn't special ed there. They called it, and I hope that special ed isn't like an offensive term. It's literally what we called the class.
Yeah, that's
just
what we called it
for
too.
Our listeners or whatever, like for your listeners, I just want to know, like, it was not a term of, it was to some people, but to me, that was just what the class was called, you know?
Yeah.
So when I went to college, it was called Student Services. And I had a counselor that I think you'll totally relate to this. Her name was Nancy Litke. She's amazing. And I would go to meetings with her like once a week, and she would like tell me if there were issues in my classes. She would talk to my teachers for me. She would encourage me to talk to my teachers. And I remember like my first few weeks in school, I had like some paper due. I was like talking to her about it, and she said, Charlie, you know that you're a perfectionist, right? And I was like, how can I be a perfectionist if I got horrible grades in high school? Like, I cannot be a perfectionist. And she was like, have you ever not turned in papers because you didn't think they were good enough? And I was like, yeah, all the time. And she's like, that's what's happening. Like, you're trying to be perfect, and it's making it so you're not getting anything. And that's what changed. Like, I started to be like, okay, I'll just turn in a crummy paper, and then I'd get it back and it'd be like a B. But to me, it wasn't like anywhere close to as good as a B, you know? And so in college, I graduated with a 3.5 GPA, double major. And I am very proud of that because of how much I thought I was a fucking idiot in high school. And like, I was able to find out that I wasn't stupid. And it was because college is different from high school and elementary school.
You didn't major in something art related, right? You didn't major in theater.
Yeah, I went to Roosevelt University of History and Psychology. Now, I don't know how much this has to do with my ADHD, but like, this is another thing that like, as an artist, I've dealt with, of like just confidence, not being like able to present something that's not perfect. All the schools that I applied to technically had theater programs at them, but I was too afraid to audition for any of the theater programs, so I just applied to their academic programs.
Interesting.
So like, even though all of them had those programs, I never auditioned for any of them because I was afraid I wouldn't be good enough, and like that I wasn't going to belong because of those teachers' voices in my head, you know, which I didn't really realize at the time, but doing things, working on myself, going to therapy for years, having the Artist's Way help me understand that like these voices were in my head telling me, you don't belong here. You don't have a voice that's going to be good enough. You don't have like enough of an acting technique because you didn't go to school for it in high school, things like that.
Yeah.
So I I had a double major in history and psychology. And I do think that it was really important that that happened to me, though, because I really did think I was stupid.
It's hard for me to imagine, honestly.
Me being stupid.
Watching you on stage is fascinating too, because you are such a smart actor. So let's talk about you as an artist now. You are an actor. That's how I first met you. You also play ukulele and guitar.
Yeah. Yes, beginner. Okay, no, moderate. Okay, I'm okay. I can do chords and I can sing with myself. There you go.
That's great. And
I'm expanding my artistic capabilities.
Yeah, and you're also a writer. You wrote a play,
yes,
called Crush.
Yeah.
So, what does it feel like to make art?
I mean, it just feels like correct and the right thing for me to be doing. I can feel when I haven't done art for a while.
Yeah.
I can feel it physically, like it's like a scar tissue or something. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, because then the wound is art, but like it's like something, or it's more like it's building up in me and I haven't like let it out, right? And so it starts to like suffocate me a little bit, which is why I wrote the show I was writing, and why I've done The Artist's Way every other time I've done it. I've done it 3 times. And every single time is because there's something in my life feeling like, what am I trying to let out of me? Like there's something like in there and I feel like I'm not letting it out, and what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's always art.
Yeah.
And that's what's really hard as an actor, is like, if people aren't casting you, how are you going to make your art, right?
Sure.
When I decided like, okay, if I'm not going to be doing anything right now, then I'm going to write myself into a show.
Yeah.
And then I did. And I found that same passion I felt about acting in writing.
Yeah.
Those moments when I like feel like I'm a conduit for something,
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What that feeling is? The conduit.
It's so funny because I always am so afraid I'll sound like pretentious or like conceited. So I feel like kind of silly sometimes talking about the conduit thing, because it sounds so like I've been chosen by like some deity or something. But I don't think it's a special feeling that I only get. I think it's something that everybody gets, and like that's what's special about it.
Yeah, you can access it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't happen every time, but there are shows and even sometimes just performances of that show where I'm like, whoa, this is pumping through me. Like
when you're performing?
Yeah, like I'm not even trying. Like Daisy Faye, Summer of Daisy Faye, that was like a big part of that.
Daisy Faye was her one-person show that I assistant directed.
Yeah.
So that's what she's talking about.
Yeah. And it was like when I was on stage and like afterward, when people would be like, you did such a great job, you were amazing, I honestly was like, that wasn't me. Right? Like not like that wasn't me, that was the artist, but like it was, that's really how it felt. Like it was like, that was Daisy. She just let me perform whatever that was.
You were channeling something.
I was channeling something, and I did all the work to make it so the channeling could happen. Like, let's not, like, I'm going to sit here and tell you, like, that's where I'll get really, like, high and mighty about it. Like, I frickin' studied those lines for 3 months. And I
know you did.
It
seems like it was more than 3 months.
Oh, I knew I was doing it for 6 months. So I started, but like for 3 months straight in Seattle, every day I would be working on each monologue, walking around parks, pretending like with headphones on, so it looked like I was talking to somebody on the phone. So I'm just like talking to myself. And
how many actors out there have done that? I have done that so many times. I'm like, no, I'm definitely on the phone.
I'm on the phone, and I'm like doing a one-woman show, so it looks like I talk the most, and that the other person has nothing to say. And so so I did all that work. So it made it so that once I was on the stage, I was a vessel that could have that kind of, I was a conduit for something that just flowed through me. And that feeling is just like the audience and you just like know whatever's happening is correct. It's that feeling of like, if you didn't like what I put out there, then that means you don't like it. It doesn't mean I was bad at it.
Yeah.
I have have also felt that feeling while writing, where like I'm writing, I'm like fighting against myself. So I'm like, this is so bad. Like, this is bad. I'm like typing like with like anguish in my face. And then something like clicks, it just starts to flow. And I'm like, oh, this is good. This is fucking good. And it's not like, wow, you're such a good writer, Charlie. It's like, this makes sense. Like, it's that same feeling of like, oh man, this is a scene. Like, I just stopped typing and the scene is there. And that gave me that same excitement and passion that like, I don't think I could get out of anything other than being an artist for me. It doesn't happen every time I make art, but when it does, I'm like, there's nothing else I want to do.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Yeah, I know. I feel that.
Because no one pays me to do it, but.
Yeah, well, that's another conversation. Yeah. So I'm aware that it is quarantine and we don't know when theater is going to happen again. But I did want to ask, do you have anything that you're working on right now? Any projects?
I'm writing right now. So this is the first time I'm writing without a writer's room, because with Crush, I did it with New Colony, and it was everybody holding each other accountable, and it was awesome. And now this is the first time I'm like having to write without anybody being like, where are your pages, except myself. And it has been very fulfilling having that outlet, because I miss theater so much.
Me too, girl.
So weird. And like with everything going on in the world right now, like I feel like we need it more than ever to like amplify voices and like get awareness out there in ways that like, I just like during this Black Lives Matter movement, it's like artists are itching, right? Like I'm itching to see other people's art, like people of color, to like get their shit on the stage. And like, we can't, and we won't be able to for like, in like probably till 2021, like really, unless we're like doing it on the streets, which I'm sure we'll figure out how to do that, honestly.
Yeah, we'll do anything.
But I just like, I miss it every day. And I didn't know, because there's times when I'm like not doing a show, but I'm still going to shows and I'm still like around actors all the time and like hearing them talk about art. And it's like, I miss it so much.
I feel that. Well, Charlie, this has been so wonderful.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's nice to get to know you in this way. We've been friends for so long, but have we ever sat down and talked about this kind of stuff? You finally get me to stay quiet and listen to you for an hour.
Talk about Charlie for once. No, no, I think it's true. And I mean, when you like offered, I was so excited because it's something that I really had a lot to say on. So I'm really grateful that you have this podcast so I could yap about it.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much. I will see you very soon.
Bye.
And that's it for today for the ADHD Artist Podcast. This podcast was produced by me, Sarah Guys. Original music composed by Christopher Aaron Narr. You can find more of his work at www.christopheraaronnar.com. Narr is spelled Knarr. Podcast artwork by Joseph Ramsky. For any inquiries, you can contact him directly at jramski3@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at the ADHD Artist Pod.